dads, meditation, and the myth of emotional weakness. And I wanted to record this video because I realized when I'm in spaces with fellow dads and we're talking about mindfulness, either I'm told directly or I get the sense, this happens both ways, that some men, fathers, look at all of this as a sign of weakness. And I want to talk about that because I'm thinking like, all right, let's talk about where that comes from, right? Before I go on a rampage of this is not weakness and this is why this is not weakness, I think it starts with, where does this way of thinking from? Where does this perspective start? And I think that's important. So, hands down, I think we all would agree that this is conditioned, right? We are almost conditioned to feel like, from young men as well, to feel like these things make us soft, right? I know you've heard this term before. Stop acting like a girl. When you're showing your emotions, right? Stop acting like a girl. Man up, toughen up. And I've talked about why that happens to us. And it's just a cycle. It's a generational cycle being handed down. But on top of that, it's society. Society has put us in a box as fathers, as providers, as nurturers. They have put us in a box and said, this is the way you have to do it. And if it looks anything different, whoa, the masculine traits that you say you have, do you really? And I think men, a lot of the times, I'm part of that group that sometimes we feel as though we really care about how the outside world views us. We really care about that. And when it comes to being a dad, external validation is the last thing you should worry about. What you should worry about is, how are you being present for your children, and are you giving them the type of love that they need sincerely, not the type of love that society is telling you should give them because you are a man. And I think that's what's important, and we are at a place where we are literally viewing grief, sadness, disappointment, fear. We are viewing those emotions as being weak. And one of the first things I'm going to tell you is the reason why that's ridiculous is viewing your, imagine being tied to an emotion, right? That can't be you. You know what I'm saying? You can't be aware of something and also be it at the same time. That doesn't make any sense if you think about this logically. So why would we just take on, oh, I'm just a sad guy. Oh, I'm just a disappointed guy. I'm a fearful guy. These emotions, you're aware of them, but you are not your emotions. But because you are thinking you are your emotions, you think the whole world is going to look at you as being weak. And when these emotions arise, you suppress them. I've done the same thing. I'm not perfect. And I'm just here to tell you, suppressing your emotions is not going to help you in any journey in your life. Not as a dad, not as an employee, not as a husband, a boyfriend, whatever the case may be. Being a man that is able to be aware of his emotions, but then deal with them and not suppress them, that's a strong man, right? And when we talk about mindfulness, all the time people say to me, well, I don't know how to meditate because my mind just keeps going and going and going, and that doesn't make sense to me. Listen to me when I tell you, that is a weak way of thinking, and I'm not judging because I've been there. Your mind is going and going, but guess what's happening? Real stuff is being brought up into the atmosphere, and you don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with it. That's why I say meditation is courageous, right? Meditation, being mindful, that's not a weakness. That's actually courageous to say, I'm going to sit down in silence, and whatever comes up is going to come up, and I'm going to find a way to deal with it. I'm going to find a way to address it. What's weak about that, right? But because as humans, we know that this will come up. We know if we sit in silence for 25 minutes, we know some real stuff may surface, and we're afraid of that. So I think being a mindful father, being a man that wants to meditate and wants to learn more about the his inner self, that is very courageous in my opinion. I would never view that as weak, but society will have you thinking that that is weak. And when I talk about meditation, sometimes I don't even like talking about all the benefits because I'm from an era of meditation where you don't do it for the benefits, right? It's weird. It's like we know that this is going to make you less reactive as a father. We know that this is going to make you more emotionally grounded. We do know all of these things, but we shouldn't sit on the mat, on the cushion, on the chair, expecting that and wanting that. We should just sit on the cushion because we genuinely want to look at the true nature of our thoughts, look at the true nature of how things really are. And then from doing that and wanting to do that and cultivating that mindset, then you get the benefits will come, but we shouldn't sit for the benefits, if that makes any sense. Uh, it's a weird paradox. But I say all that to say, I had my son on my podcast a few weeks ago, and he literally told everybody who we did not script the episode. We just started talking, and he asked me a question. He said, "Dad, with all that you've been through, how are you able to still show up this way? Like, you're so kind, you're so compassionate. How do you, with all that you've been through?" And that's because my mindfulness practice gives me emotional resilience. One person can look at the things I do as, oh, he's soft, he's weak, or he got a pen in his hand, he's journaling his feelings, he's meditating, he's contemplating why did he show up this way instead of this way. He's contemplating the impermanence of, man, one day I won't be here, so I really have to show up differently. One person can look at that as weak, but I'm looking at it as that gives me emotional resilience because that makes me know no matter what I'm going through, it can change at any time, right? When I deal with fatherhood adversity, I'm a co-parenting dad. I deal with two different women when it comes to being a parent. That comes with frustration at times. And I have to be emotionally resilient to deal with that type of stuff. I would be kidding you if I told you that my mindfulness practice does not attribute to my emotional resilience when it comes to fatherhood, when it comes to co-parenting dynamics. There are times where I'm like, man, I really miss my children. There are times when I'm like, man, I really wish I could do this with my kids instead of doing that. There are times when I'm thinking like, am I showing up how I really need to show up? And because of my mindfulness practice, I'm able to see things how they truly are. How are things truly? You spend a lot of time with your children. The second thing is when your kids are with you, they love you. They don't fear you. They view you as an understanding dad. They view you as a dad that is compassionate. They view you as a dad that they can talk to with all of their emotions. The 13-year-old and the 3-year-old view you that way. You are a safe space for them. But if I wasn't emotionally resilient, if I didn't realize that, whatever frustrations I'm going through in the moment will change. If I don't realize that in the moment, I'm useless. I'm useless to them and I'm basically useless to myself, right? I have to be there for them. And if I'm too stuck on tying myself to my emotions because I'm not seeing things how they truly are, I'm useless as a father, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Being someone who meditates does not make you weak. It takes courage to sit in silence and know whatever comes up is going to come up and I'm going to have to deal with it instead of suppressing it. That's weak. And we all do it. We suppress all the time. The last thing I want to touch on this topic is why it's so important as fathers to truly have a perspective shift on this is because we don't want to pass this way of thinking down. We want to change cycles, right? We want to break these cycles. And if I look at my son and say, "Oh man, remember you sent me that text message and we were having that deep conversation and you said the words I said to you meant so much to you that you cried? Don't do that." That sounds crazy if you think about it. Why would I ever say that to him, right? But that's essentially the way we're raised and the way that society wants us to be. It's almost like they want us to say that. But you and I both can agree that that sounds crazy. That sounds stupid, right? So when I tell my son how proud I am of him after his basketball tournament, and he shouldn't be sad that they didn't win because he played so hard, and I'm so proud of him, and he deserves everything he has coming his way. When I say that in my own words, and he responds and says, "Man, I hate to admit this, but I'm crying right now." Why would I tell him stop? No, no, cry. Feel these emotions. Feel these emotions, right? And you know what's going to happen? He's going to trust me more. He's going to be okay with his emotions. And when he has a son, he's going to tell his son that it's okay to show your emotions. It's a difference between showing your emotions, being aware of your emotions, and being caught up in them and tying yourself to the emotion. That's why we meditate, to A, see that they're arising, but then B, be like, okay, cool. This too shall pass, instead of being caught in the tornado, right? And same thing with our daughters. Our daughters, if we continue this path, our daughters are going to look for men that are just like us because we're good dads, right? So our daughters trust us. So they're going to say, "Oh, well, this is my dad. I love my dad. My dad is silent. He keeps to himself. He doesn't really tell me how he feels. So that's the trait of a good man. And that's what I'm going to look for when I grow up." And we kind of don't want that, because then they're going to get in these relationships and realize like, this is nothing that I want. So we really, really, need to look at where this myth came from, that being a man that is exploring his inner self is weak. A man that is aware of his emotions is weak, right? Where does that come from? Once we realize where it comes from, okay, what can we do to change that in our life? And just by doing that in our life, we eventually will, it's like nuggets. We're going to spread little nuggets to everyone else, and it's going to change. At some point, it will change. And also, we're breaking generational cycles, right? That's the way you want to look at this whole thing about being this type of father is weak. It's very courageous. It's very courageous to look in the mirror, to look inside and be like, this doesn't feel good for me. Tell me more, right? Very courageous. And on that note, I want to wish everybody a happy Father's Day. Enjoy the moments, enjoy the experiences with your children this weekend, and build on it, build on it, build on it week by week by week. I'm sending light, and I'll catch y'all next week.